Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Thrive Yoga Fit Transformational Coaching. This is Erin, and I have had a crazy week with actually 2 weeks with moving and then like getting internet set up, and then I had microphone issues, and then phone issues. It's like all the things that could prevent me from doing a podcast happened all in the span of 2 weeks. So that was my break. But I'm back and I'm super happy to be here. And thank you for my regular listeners for your patience. It's stressful to do all that, but I live in downtown St. Pete now. I'm super excited. It's like all these people who I've been teaching for years seem to have moved to St. Pete. Like maybe 2 months ago, I was just going to with my friend Kelly to um, it was like a little event. There's so many of them in St. Pete. Kind of like get together where there was like music and foods and people were selling things. Actually, I bought these earrings there. Um, and there was a gal there, and my friend Kelly was like, "Oh, let me introduce you to her." And she did. And the gal's like, "Wait a second, Erin?" And I was like, "Hey." And she's like, "You were my yoga teacher like 15 years ago." And I was like, "How is that possible? I'm only 35." Um, anyways, I wound up presenting at a festival. She said, "Hey, would you like to present at Awakening into the Sun Festival?" And I was like, "That sounds like a cult. I'm in." And I presented there. It was very beautiful. And I posted some pictures on social media that I did a breath workshop because, it's like, how can I expedite people being able to come back to themselves in a big way? And so I chose breath work. And I had so many people coming up to me afterwards, like, "Where did you come from? What was that?" I'm feeling things. And so I had to help ground them. And some of even my trainees came out, Alejandro and Kyle and a couple others. Anyways, I'm back and I'm here to talk about myosomatic therapies. This is part two, much awaited, I'm sure, because the first one came out a couple weeks ago. That brings me to talking about the insula. So the insula is very interesting to me because I had a direct experience with it and sort of the power of it at this last training I went to for massage. So if you could peel back the top layers of the brain, the frontal, temporal lobes, hidden between them is a fold of island in tissue, and it's called insula, which actually means island in Latin. So the primary somatosensory sense cortex that we talked about earlier, that handles stuff from the outside world, and the insula handles things from the inside world. It's called interoception, and it notices the subtle inner states of the body. For example, if you have to go to the bathroom, if need like a really deep breath, if you feel hungry. So the subtle and often unconscious pressure, this signals from your fascia. And this is how it works. So if the back part of the insula, the posterior insula, is the receiving dock. It gets raw data from the body, heart beating, stomach digesting, fascia stretching in the lower back. But then the information flows to the anterior insula, and this is where the magic happens. It's kind of posterior and anterior, kind of like the pituitary. So the raw data turns into feeling, so like a somatic experience. The anterior insula asks the question, how does this make me feel? And this is the difference between a physical measurement and a human experience. For example, the posterior insula feels the stomach like fluttering. The anterior insula connects your memories and emotions to saying like, "Hey, I'm nervous," or "I have anxiety." So in a myosomatic session where we hold a position, we apply gentle pressure and we ask our client to breathe in, tune in. We can do this in yoga or in the massage world. We are not just moving tissue. We are inviting clients' brain to move that signal from the back of the insula to the front. We're asking them to move from detection to awareness. And I just want to share, I worked on my friend Casey. I've actually just been called to do a lot more body work lately. Is something I kind of put off to the side because it's kind of laborious, but I have the skill set that a lot of people need. And for me, it's very easy. I can literally see someone, scan them, and know intuitively, but also like physiologically and anatomy, musculoskeletal wise, I can describe what's going on, and I can help them to recruit this somatic experience and draw it down into their tissues. So I was working on my friend Casey, and he has like a lot of issues going on, but I was like, dude, I need to work on your psoas first, hip flexors. I needed to release the sartorius in the front of the hip. And then I was able to finally get into the pectoralis minor, the anterior delt, and the bicep femoris was all like bunched up together. So I needed to pull everything apart. And I said, yo, listen, like this is a team effort. And, if we're doing this, I need you to draw your mind in. Now, he's a long time meditator, a long time, like kind of spiritual person. I could literally feel the sort of, I call it purnada, the thickness of his awareness coming down into that spot, and combine that with breathing, with a little bit of dialogue. There was a lot of releasing happening. I was at the Kava Social Club because I'm a weirdo and I'll do stuff like that. And I had to go up to the little outside heaters and put my hands up on the fire to bring some element to release the sort of energy that he expressed and that like captured into my hands. And that's another important thing as a body worker is you need to be tuned in to those somatic feelings, those subtle sensations within, to be able to be not just effective, but to also protect yourself. So pretty cool. So this stuff really does work. And, this is why sometimes people cry on the table, because they draw that subtle awareness in, they connect it to the emotion. It's not always the muscle that hurts. It's that the anterior insula connects the physical sensation to an emotional memory that was stored in the tissue. The body keeps the score, and the insula reads that score out loud. So it's very interesting stuff. And the insula also helps us to gain awareness so we can process those memories, process trauma and grief. So we have pressure, we have an internal feeling, but where does the higher part come in? The sense of connection, the God moment or aha, and the feeling of being present. The insula also has a lot to do with this. And this is where the insula connects to the rest of the brain's operating system. So there are two major networks that we need to look at, which is the salience network. The anterior insula works closely with the anterior cingulate cortex. Together, they act as like a little filter. There are millions of stimuli hitting the brain every second, and the hum, like the hum of the AC, which my place doesn't have central, the texture of sheets, and the thought about what's going to be presented at dinner, what you're going to go out for. The salience network decides what deserves my attention right now. In therapy, when a client stops thinking about their to-do list and finally focuses on the tension in their psoas muscle or back, the shift is in the salience network. And I just find that so interesting. It's driven by the insula saying, all right, ignore the noise, pay attention to this. This is more important. Second, the default mode network. This is the higher consciousness hub. And this network includes the medial prefrontal cortex. We're getting pretty fancy here. And the posterior cingulate cortex. It lights up when we're doing nothing, daydreaming or thinking about our life story or what we're going through, and maybe even wondering who we are. It is the seat of the narrative self, the me. So in a relaxed meditative state or in a deep state of therapeutic touch, the default mode network can become quiet. Or it can integrate with the body signals from the insula. When that happens, we experience that state of unity, samadhi. So it's very interesting. It's like all mapped out in your brain. The story of me, of ego, stops, and there's just the sensation of being, of presence. This is connection to a higher consciousness. It is not mystical. It's not too esoteric. It is literally the brain's ability to be aware of itself and alive. And this happens when the insula successfully tells the rest of the brain, hey, the body is here and it matters. So as a myosomatic yogi and practitioner, we are unique because we aren't just talking to the muscles. We are talking to the insula. We're helping clients to rebuild the bridge between their body and their sense of self. So I hope that this has been, like, I've learned a lot by researching this. I've learned a lot about talking about this because it sort of reinforces when you teach at the highest level of learning. And I am just fascinated by this stuff, y'all. As a spiritual practitioner and conscious person for almost 20 years, knowing the connection of like the science to the mysticism is like where it's at for me. So I am interviewing one of my teachers. Her name is Charlotte, and Charlotte Goodspeed. I think that's her real last name. But anyways, I'll be interviewing her on Tuesday. She's an Ayurvedic practitioner as well as a myosomatic therapist. Very interesting person, very sweet, has an amazing energy. And so I decided to have her on the podcast. So that's happening this Tuesday, should be released Friday, and hopefully this podcast will be released before then. So thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you for your patience. I'm still getting settled in a little bit, but you know what? Sometimes you just got to get it done. So thank you so much, and namaste.